Next we have Sherif Mansour from Freedom House, who does a lot of very interesting work on Egypt and North Africa. Sherif?
We work in Egypt and the Middle East, and they are highly authoritarian regimes. And in these regimes, there are great risks that people and activists are taking every day. So we are familiar with what they are doing, what kind of risks and consequences they will have to go through in their actions. This is why we create alternative methods for them to meet, associate, and provide protection ahead of time for them if they got into trouble. In our programming in Egypt, we have something called Blue Umbrella. And this Blue Umbrella has 3 components. One of them is a website, secured website, social network for them to meet. They have profiles there, they have chat service, they have all what you can think of, and Facebook and other social networks is there, in addition to complete security and anonymity. No one else can get into the website and register and be able to know what's happening in the website. So that's one. Second thing is that we help them create what we call communities of practice. And this is like an attempt from our side to help them share more information, share more resources with each other, and build unity and collective actions. And this has proven to be very helpful for them. If anything has happened, that they stick together, they're able to communicate and encounter any risk and problems they get into. A third thing is that what we call the International Solidarity Committee. An International Solidarity Committee have members from prominent public figures in the US and in Europe, who are normally parliament member, congressmen, and other famous writers who have interest in the democracy and human rights situation in Egypt and the Middle East region. And what we do is that we provide opportunities for these local activists to meet with the International Solidarity Committee, build relationships, and sponsoring this relationship into a mentoring level, so that they are aware of what they do and provide advice for them. And if something happened to them, they will be speaking up on their behalf. So if a young democracy activist is linked directly to a US Congress member, this will provide him not only protection, it would also empower him to feel safe to do the kind of work that he or she is doing. This is the concept that we work on. And also I would like to share some best practices that we have used, and I think activists have used in Egypt. One of them is naming and shaming techniques. It works very well, specifically if activists are targeting people by name. It's very easy. It happens all the time that activists and journalists will criticize the government, will write critical materials about the government, and the government will not react or will not care about this human right violation or whatever. But when it comes very personal, when they target the name and they state the person name and the government, the district that he lives in or she lives in, their neighbor, then it becomes personal to the person, to the human rights violator. And we've seen it became very helpful, because these people have an image that they want to portray to their families, to their friends, to their neighbors. So that's one of the techniques that was used. Another best practices that we've used and utilized, thinking ahead, planning ahead. In many cases, all the operation techniques and mechanisms have been used for decades. So we know what kind of tools is going to be employed by the government. And in many cases, if you think ahead and you know this is what's going to happen, you will be able to avoid it. One of the examples is Facebook. Facebook has been used for so long in Egypt for pure social reasons, fun reasons. People were using it to connect. And once it became like visible that it is going to be used for political reasons, advocacy groups in Egypt and outside started to talk about Facebook blocking in Egypt beforehand, before even the government announce or start any intentions to block the website. And this is a counter mechanism so that they are not able to do that. So by the time they think about it, it's already in the public domain and people are able to avoid it. I'll give another example if there is time. One of the Facebook organizers in Egypt, when they first starting transforming the movement from being pure online movement into real-time activism, they picked July 23rd, last July, for their first actual event in the street. And this was because this was the National Liberty Day, where Egypt had its revolution, which kicked out occupation. So that was a great choice because it's a time where all Egyptians are proud and able to express their love for the country and whatever. So it was very high risk for the government to crack down on their activities. Second thing that they've done was also about thinking ahead is that they've invited all national and international media to be present on site. And that's also one of the techniques that limits the government ability to crack down on the activities. A third thing, which is a dilemma action for them, is that when they went, they have done nothing other than raising the Egyptian flag. It's a national day to celebrate liberty. They haven't said anything critical to the government. They haven't talked about anything other than raising the Egyptian flag and wearing T-shirts which identified them as a movement. So I think this was clever in the and wise transition for them, is that they haven't started this actual event very boldly inviting government oppression. So these are some of the techniques that I can share with you in the few minutes that I have. And if there is any questions, I can answer later.
Thanks very much, Sherif. I think